I never wanted to join them. No sane person would. The ghost hunting team isn't just some group of thrill seekers hunting shadows in abandoned houses. We aren't like those TV ghost hunters who gasp at flickering lights and call it paranormal. No, our job is different. We don't chase ghosts. They chase us, and if we break the rules, they catch us. I've seen it happen. I've watched teammates vanish mid-scream, their bodies snatched into the dark, never to be seen again. I've heard voices whisper names that should have been impossible to know. I've felt ice-cold breath on the back of my neck, only to turn around and find nothing. Or worse, something that shouldn't exist. We work in places that shouldn't be entered. Houses where entire families were found huddled in corners, mouths frozen in silent screams. Hotels where guests check in, but the rooms stay empty. Schools where the desks are never moved because the chairs keep pulling themselves back to where the students once sat. Each time we enter a site, we follow 6 rules. We don't ask why. We don't break them, because breaking them means death, or something far worse. I learned that the hard way. The night I joined the team, I met the man who would be my partner, Ethan Graves. He looked at me with the tired, haunted eyes of someone who had seen things no one should see. "You should leave now," he said, his voice flat. "Before it's too late." I didn't leave. Maybe I should have. The team consisted of 5 members: Ethan, Riley, Marcus, Jenna, and me. Riley was the leader, a man who spoke in whispers even when he wasn't afraid. Marcus had been with the team for 6 years, longer than anyone should survive. Jenna was the skeptic. She thought the rules were superstition. Jenna's the reason I know what happens when you break them. Our mission that night was Holloway House, a 3-story monstrosity standing alone in the woods. The original owners had built it in 1893, but no one lived there for long. The family that built it vanished. The next owners were found in their beds, their faces contorted in expressions of sheer terror. The house had a reputation. Some say people hear crying from the 3rd floor. Others talk about the mirror in the master bedroom. How if you stand in front of it long enough, your reflection moves, even when you don't? Riley briefed us outside the house, his voice cold and firm. 6 rules. Follow them, or you're dead. I listened carefully. Rule number 1, do not speak when you hear footsteps, no matter how close they get. Rule number 2, if a door is open, do not close it. If a door is closed, do not open it. Rule number 3, never stand in front of a mirror longer than 5 seconds. Rule 4, if someone calls your name, do not answer, unless you can see them. Rule 5, do not step on the 3rd stair, ever. Rule 6, if you see her, run. I swallowed. Who's her? No one answered. The house loomed in front of us, its windows like hollow eyes staring down. The air smelled wrong, stale, rotten, something sickly sweet underneath. The trees around us were dead, twisted into unnatural shapes. I felt something watching. We stepped inside. The moment the door shut, I knew something was off. The silence wasn't empty, it was listening. The air felt thick, like moving through something unseen. Then the footsteps started. They came from upstairs, slow, deliberate. My breath hitched. It sounded like someone was coming down the stairs, each step heavier than the last. Then I realized there were only 5 of us, but I counted 6 steps. Jenna whispered, "Who the hell?" Riley's hand slammed over her mouth. Rule number 1, do not speak when you hear footsteps, no matter how close they get. The steps reached the bottom. I felt something near me, something unseen. My throat locked up. My skin burned with cold. Then, just as suddenly as they started, they stopped. Riley removed his hand from Jenna's mouth and hissed, "That was almost your last mistake." Jenna's face was pale. She nodded. We moved deeper into the house. The hallway stretched in front of us, the doors slightly ajar. I felt like they were waiting for us to break rule number 2. I caught sight of myself in a mirror. My reflection was facing the wrong way. I turned away before the 5-second mark. Marcus wasn't so lucky. He lingered in front of the mirror, his brows furrowed. I saw his lips move, like he was talking to himself. "Marcus," Riley whispered, "get away." Marcus didn't move. His reflection smirked. "Marcus." Then his reflection reached out. We watched as hands pulled Marcus into the mirror. His scream was cut short. The mirror shattered, glass flying everywhere, but Marcus was gone. Not a trace, just silence, a silence that listened. Jenna broke first. She ran. We heard her footsteps echo through the house, up the stairs. Then a door slammed. Riley cursed. "She's dead." I swallowed hard. "We have to go after her." Riley shook his head. "No. If you see her again, It won't be her anymore. A noise came from upstairs. Crying. It was Jenna's voice. I took a step forward, but Ethan grabbed my wrist, his grip iron tight. "That's not Jenna," he whispered. The crying grew louder. It came from the master bedroom, the one with the mirror. Then, in the darkness, I saw her, standing at the top of the stairs. She shouldn't be here. Her head tilted unnaturally far, almost upside down. She was smiling, a grin that stretched too wide. Jenna was dead, but she was still standing, and she was calling my name. Her voice was wrong. It sounded too smooth, too practiced, like something learning how to speak. The shape of her mouth didn't match the words. Her eyes, which had been a warm brown just moments ago, were now hollow pits of blackness, too deep, too empty. The air around me curdled. It felt like something was pressing in on my skin, forcing its way into my lungs. Every part of me screamed to run, but my legs locked in place. "Come here," she whispered. I couldn't breathe. Her head twitched, a small, jerking motion, like something was adjusting her body from the inside. Her smile widened. Ethan grabbed my arm and yanked me backward. My foot slipped, and I hit the ground hard, but I didn't care, because Jenna moved. Not walked, moved. 1 second she was at the top of the stairs. The next, she was on the third step. I choked on a scream. Rule number 5, do not step on the third stair. Ever. I knew, instantly, she had just broken it. The whole house shuddered. It was like something deep beneath the floors woke up. A sound rose from below us, low, guttural, not human. It vibrated the walls, rattling the old, rotting chandeliers. Jenna didn't seem to care. She just stood there, tilting her head at me, her black hole eyes locked onto mine. Then, something behind her opened its mouth. I didn't see it, not fully, just a darkness that moved, something huge and hungry rising from the shadows, taking shape behind her. Its mouth stretched wide. Too wide. Jenna didn't even flinch, she just smiled. And then she was yanked backward. A force, massive, unseen, unstoppable, ripped her off the third step. She didn't make a sound. 1 second she was there, the next she wasn't. The shape swallowed her whole. The silence after was the worst part. Riley exhaled slowly. She broke a rule. Ethan helped me up, his grip trembling. I could feel it through my jacket. Marcus was gone. Jenna was gone. Now it was just the three of us. "We need to move," Riley said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And we do not go upstairs." He turned, leading us toward the hallway. The whole house felt different now, heavier. I could feel it watching. The crying started again. This time, it came from everywhere. Soft sobbing echoed through the walls, the floors, the ceiling. It sounded like Jenna. My hands shook as I pressed them to my ears, but it didn't help. The sound was inside me. I squeezed my eyes shut. This isn't real. She's gone. A breath brushed against the side of my neck. I opened my eyes. She was right in front of me. Not whole, not human. Jenna's body twitched and jerked, as if something inside her was fighting to wear her skin. Her arms hung limply at her sides. Her jaw unhinged slightly, and the crying poured from her lips, but she wasn't moving her mouth. The sound was wrong. It was coming from the walls, not her. Then she opened her mouth, and the whisper came. "Let me in." I ran. We all did. The hallway stretched endlessly in front of us, warping, twisting, the doors on either side slamming shut, one by one. I saw shadows moving through the cracks, things pressing against the wood, pushing, stretching. We turned a corner. The walls groaned. They were breathing. Then ahead of us, a door slowly creaked open. I nearly screamed. Rule number 2, if a door is open, do not close it. If a door is closed, do not open it. We stopped instantly. The door stood wide open, gaping like a mouth. Behind us, Jenna laughed. It wasn't hers, it was layered. Hundreds of voices tangled together, cracking, choking. Something slid against the ceiling above us. Ethan's breathing was ragged. What do we do? Riley's face was stone. We keep walking. We don't run. We don't close it. We just move. We stepped forward. The open door waited. I kept my eyes locked on the floor, refusing to look inside. Don't look. Don't look. But Ethan, he stole a glance. His whole body stiffened. I reached for him. "Ethan, don't!" He screamed. It was a sound I can never forget. Something inside that room dragged him in. His nails ripped against the floorboards as he clawed for grip. We grabbed his arms, but it was like something stronger than gravity itself was pulling him. The darkness inside the room roiled, twisted. So many hands, so many faces grinning from the void. Ethan's skin sank inward. His eyes met mine. "Don't let go." Then he was gone. The door slammed shut. The walls stopped breathing. The house went still. And we were alone. Riley's face was pale. We can't do this anymore. He turned toward the front door. He reached for the handle. And then we heard it. From the other side, the sound of something breathing. Slow, deep, waiting. Riley pulled his hand back like he'd been burned. And then came the knock. 1, 2, 3. Soft, patient. Then Ethan's voice, "Let me in." But it wasn't Ethan. The words slid under the door, like a whisper curling around my spine. The voice had the right rhythm, the right tone, but there was something off, too smooth, too controlled. Like someone was trying too hard to sound human. Riley and I stood frozen, barely breathing. The house was listening. I could feel it. Another knock, slower this time. I took a step back, my legs shaking. That's not him. Riley nodded stiffly, his face pale. He looked at the door, then at me. We can't open it. We both knew the rule. Rule number 4, do not open the door for anyone. But the thing outside didn't care. The knob twitched. Not turned, twitched. Like something was learning how to use it. I bit down on a scream. "Ethan's dead," I whispered. "We saw him." The thing outside laughed. Not loud, soft, dragging. A sound that slithered over my skin, squeezing my ribs tight. "Are you sure?" it whispered. I swallowed hard. Then a shadow moved against the bottom of the door. Not footsteps. Something crawling. The floorboards creaked. I gripped Riley's arm so hard my nails dug into his jacket. The thing pressed against the wood. I saw its shape push forward, something thin, bony. Its head shifted, pressing to the door like it was listening for our breathing. I felt like my lungs were full of ice. Then it started knocking from the ceiling. Inside the house, my heart stopped. Knock, 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 from above us. Then the wall to our left, then the floor beneath our feet. It was inside. We ran. The hallway seemed longer now. It stretched in impossible ways, like the house itself was unraveling. Doors appeared where they hadn't been before. Others disappeared entirely. A door ahead of us stood wide open. I stopped so fast I almost fell. Rule number 2, if a door is open, do not close it. If a door is closed, do not open it. My hands clenched into fists. My pulse pounded in my ears. Something breathed from the darkness beyond the open door. I felt it watching, waiting. Riley grabbed my sleeve. "Keep moving." I forced my legs to work, stepping around the open door. The floor was wet. The smell hit me a second later. Coppery. Rotting. I didn't look down. I couldn't. We reached the end of the hall. A set of stairs led downward, vanishing into the dark. Riley hesitated. Basement or? A sound ripped through the house. A low, groaning creak. The sound of something pulling itself from the walls. I didn't want to go into the basement, but I wanted to stay even less. We took the stairs. Each step groaned beneath our weight. The air grew colder, heavier. The deeper we went, the stronger the pressure in my skull became. At the bottom, the darkness was suffocating. The basement smelled wrong. Not just musty, something deeper, thicker. Like the air itself was rotting. Riley clicked on his flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, revealing a room lined with shelves, dusty furniture, rusted tools, and something standing in the farthest corner. I stopped breathing. It looked like Ethan, but it wasn't. The figure stood perfectly still, its face just a little too blurry. My whole body went cold. Then it grinned. I didn't see its mouth move. It was just suddenly smiling. The flashlight flickered. The grin widened. I yanked Riley back. "We need to go." The thing took a step forward. Its foot didn't make a sound. Then, behind us, a second set of footsteps. I spun around. The stairs were gone. A wall stood where they had been. I sucked in a sharp breath, my chest tightening. "Riley." The thing giggled. Not Ethan's voice this time. 100 voices tangled together. It lunged. Riley grabbed me, pulling me backward just as the thing's hands swiped through the air where I had just been. It twitched violently, its body jerking like a puppet with tangled strings. I didn't think. I ran. The basement stretched too far. The walls shuddered as we moved. Then I saw it. Another door. It was closed. I skidded to a stop. Riley nearly ran into me. "Go! Why did you stop?" I could barely breathe. "We can't open it." His face twisted in horror. "We don't have a choice." The thing behind us laughed again. The sound melted into sobs. I heard Jenna's voice. Please, help me. I'm so cold. Please. My stomach twisted. It wasn't her. It was never her. Riley reached for the handle. I grabbed his wrist. A whisper filled the room. That door was never here before. The words weren't mine. They weren't Riley's. They came from the floor. A slow, ragged breath crawled up through the concrete. Riley's fingers froze inches from the handle. Something scraped against the other side. Long, slow drags, like fingernails testing the wood. We both stood completely still. The thing behind us moved closer. The thing beyond the door shifted. The walls breathed. Then a voice from beyond the door, soft and wrong. Let me in. And the handle turned, slow, deliberate. A long, rattling breath seeped through the door, curling into the air like something half alive, half decayed. I grabbed Riley's wrist and yanked him back. The door shuddered. The handle twisted again. This time, faster, hungry. We stumbled back just as the door jerked violently in its frame. Bang! A sound so sharp and sudden, it rattled through my ribs. Something was on the other side. Something strong. Something desperate. I couldn't breathe. Then a voice, thin, fractured. A near-perfect mimicry. Please, it whispered. It hurts. Riley's face was sheet white. Don't listen. Bang! The entire basement lurched. The walls quivered like a set of lungs sucking in air. The floorboards beneath us moaned. Then a second voice joined the first. A child's voice. Please, I don't want to be here anymore. My stomach twisted. The handle kept turning. And then I saw it. Something slid under the door. Fingers. Not human. Too long. Too thin. Bones that bent the wrong way. They pressed against the floor. Testing. Feeling. And then they started pulling. The door began to open. I slammed my hand against it. It shouldn't have worked. I had no strength left. My body was shaking, my chest heaving, my heart hammering so fast I thought I would pass out, but the door didn't open any further. The fingers twitched violently, then retreated. Silence. I swallowed hard, every muscle locked. Riley didn't move. Neither did I. Then the whisper came again, from directly behind us. That was a mistake. My body locked up. Riley's eyes widened in horror. Something was behind us. The air turned ice cold. Shadows stretched along the basement floor. Long, spindly, twisting unnaturally. I felt its breath on the back of my neck. We needed to move, now. I grabbed Riley's arm and bolted. The walls groaned as we ran, stretching into impossible shapes. The basement seemed endless, shifting, warping. Somewhere behind us, I heard laughter. Not one voice, a chorus of them. Whispering, sobbing, giggling. The sound chased us, crawling up the walls. The basement should have had a dead end. It didn't. Doors appeared. Dozens of them, lining the walls. Some were slightly open. Others had deep claw marks carved into the wood. One door had blood pooling underneath. Another door had a single word scratched into the surface. Run. I had no idea where to go. None of them should be opened. We kept moving, my lungs burning, and then a sound, a voice screaming our names. Riley jerked to a stop. I nearly crashed into him. What are you doing? His face twisted in horror. That's Ethan. I turned, and my blood went cold. Something was coming down the hall, not walking, dragging. It had Ethan's face, or something close to it, but its mouth was too wide, its arms too long, its head lolled loosely to one side, its neck bent at a sickening angle, and its eyes were completely empty, black holes, abysses. It reached out toward us. I grabbed Riley's sleeve. Go, now. He didn't move. The thing took a step closer. Its bones cracked. Its mouth opened wider. The edges of its lips split. Skin tore. Something shifted beneath its flesh. Like too many teeth, too many bones. I yanked Riley so hard he stumbled forward. We ran. The hallway stretched. Something crawled from the ceiling. Thin, spindly limbs, multiple faces stitched together. I saw Jenna's face, crying, screaming. I saw Ethan's face, grinning. I didn't look back. And then the hallway ended. A single door. I froze, closed. My hands shook violently. Riley. Bang. The thing slammed into the walls behind us. Its fingers raked across the floor. The door wasn't real. It couldn't be. It wasn't here before. But we had nowhere else to go. The thing behind us giggled. It whispered something. I couldn't understand. The door started opening on its own. We didn't touch it. A crack of darkness, a deeper black than the hallway, a void. Something shifted inside. A voice, soft, slithering. Come in. My head pounded. The door creaked wider. And then a hand shot out. Not human. Clawed, gray, stretching for me. Its fingers curling, clawing through the air like it could already feel my skin beneath them. I jerked back, but Riley wasn't fast enough. The thing latched onto his arm. His scream tore through the hallway, sharp and raw. The flesh where it touched him blackened instantly. Veins bulged beneath his skin, twisting, turning. I grabbed him, yanking with everything I had. His body convulsed, a horrible gurgling sound choking from his throat. The thing in the doorway pulled harder. The darkness behind it shuddered. I couldn't see what was inside, but something was watching. Something was waiting. Riley! I dug my fingers into his shirt, pulling as hard as I could. The doorframe groaned. Something whispered from the other side. A language I didn't understand. Wrong. Backward. Inhuman. And then the fingers tightened. Riley screamed. His arm began to sink into the darkness. I refused to let go. My grip slipped. Then a voice. Not from inside the door. From behind us. Close your eyes. The words wrapped around me, sinking deep into my brain like hooks. I knew that voice. I didn't understand how, but I knew it. Do it now. I squeezed my eyes shut. And then everything changed. A sound erupted from the doorway, a low, bone-rattling vibration. Riley's body seized. The air shifted. I felt it pass through me, something thick and unnatural, a sound like tearing flesh. Then the hand was gone. Riley collapsed onto the floor, panting, shaking. I fell next to him, gripping his shoulders. His skin was ice cold. His veins bulged beneath his skin, dark and wrong. But he was alive. I turned toward the door. It was closed, like it had never been open at all, but something stood beside it. I knew I shouldn't look. Every instinct screamed not to, but I did. And for a second, I saw it. A shape, a figure, twisting shadows. And then, nothing. The hallway was empty. Silence swallowed the air, but the fear didn't leave my chest. I could still feel it watching. I helped Riley up, his body weak and trembling. We had to keep moving. The hallway behind us had changed. Doors gone, walls warped. There was only one way forward. We stumbled through the darkness. Riley's breathing was shallow, uneven. His arms still throbbed with something unnatural. "We need to get out," I whispered. He didn't answer. He was staring ahead. I followed his gaze and froze. A door. At the very end of the hall. Different from the others. It was old. Wrong. The wood was rotting, pulsing like it was alive. Carvings covered the surface, symbols I didn't understand. And at the center, a single, blood-red eye. It wasn't painted. It was real. It blinked. And then the door began to open. Not fast, slow, deliberate. A silent invitation. Riley tensed beside me. I felt my own heartbeat pound against my skull. Something was on the other side. Something that had been waiting for us. A voice drifted from inside. "Come in." The same voice from the basement. The same voice from the first night. I knew we couldn't go inside, but the hallway was closing behind us. I could hear the walls creaking, shifting, moving in. We were being pushed forward, trapped, and then something stepped into view. From inside the door, it was me. I felt the blood drain from my body. I was staring at myself. Not a copy, not an illusion. It was me. Every scar, every shadow under my eyes, identical. But the way it stood, the way it smiled, like it had been waiting to be seen. Riley let out a choked sound. "That's not you," he whispered. I knew that, but my body wouldn't move. It took a step forward. I felt it in my bones, a pull, like the thing was peeling me out of my own body. The air grew heavy, thick. Riley grabbed my wrist. "We can't." The walls behind us groaned. Something was inside them, whispering, crawling, pressing forward. The thing in the doorway smiled wider, and then it reached out. Not toward me, toward Riley. Its fingers brushed his skin, and he collapsed. No sound, no scream. His body hit the ground, completely still. I dropped beside him, shaking him. "Riley, wake up. Please, please." His eyes fluttered open, and I knew immediately. The thing in the doorway was still smiling. But now, Riley was smiling too. His smile was wrong. It stretched across his face like it didn't belong there, like his muscles weren't used to moving that way. His eyes, they weren't his anymore. I scrambled back, my breath ragged. "Riley?" My voice shook. "Say something." He blinked, slow and deliberate. Then he laughed. It wasn't his laugh. It was thick, layered, like something else was laughing inside him. "Why do you look so scared?" he said. His voice was almost right, almost. But something inside it echoed, twisted. I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at me to get away, but my body refused to move. I had to be sure. I had to know. I reached out, hesitant. "Riley," I whispered. "If it's really you, tell me something only you would know." His head tilted, his smile never fading. The air around us felt thicker, denser. The walls seemed closer than before, pulsing like they were breathing. Riley licked his lips. Then, he whispered, "You should have let me die." My stomach dropped. That wasn't him. I shoved myself backward, my hands scraping against the floor. Riley, or whatever was inside him, stood up. His movements were too smooth, too controlled, like he was still learning how to use his own body. His fingers twitched, then flexed. Then he took a step toward me. I scrambled up and bolted. I didn't care where I was running. I just had to get away. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. The hallway warped as I moved, stretching and twisting like something alive. Behind me, I could hear him following. His footsteps were too light, not normal. I didn't dare look back. Then, a voice whispered beside my ear, "You can't run from him." I screamed. My shoulder slammed into a door that wasn't there before. It burst open, spilling me into another room. The door slammed shut behind me. I twisted, fumbling for the handle, but there wasn't one. Just a flat wall. My chest heaved. My skin burned. Riley was out there, but I was trapped in here. I turned, my eyes adjusting to the dim, flickering light. This room was different. It looked like a nursery. I swallowed. The air smelled like dust and something rotten. A single crib sat in the middle of the room. The mobile above it creaked, turning slowly. The floor was littered with old, broken toys. The wallpaper peeled at the edges, curling into strange shapes. A chill crawled down my spine. Something was in the crib. I didn't want to move closer. But the air shifted, pushing me forward. I tried to resist, but my feet dragged across the floor, step by step. The closer I got, the louder the mobile creaked. Then, a soft, wet sound came from inside the crib. A slithering, a gurgle, like something was breathing through water. My stomach turned. I reached out with a shaking hand. I gripped the edge of the crib and looked inside. I shouldn't have. I should have run. The thing inside was not a baby. It was wrong. Twisted limbs. Too many fingers, twitching and grasping. Its mouth was wide open, stretching too far, filled with rows of tiny black teeth. And its eyes, God, its eyes, they were Riley's. My vision blurred, my breath hitched. Then the thing smiled. Its mouth stretched impossibly wide, and it whispered, "He's already inside you." The room shuddered, the walls shifted, and then the crib shattered. The thing inside lunged. I fell back, screaming. The floor gave out beneath me. I was falling. Darkness swallowed me whole. I hit the ground hard, pain exploding through my body. The air was different now, heavy, thick, wrong. I opened my eyes and realized I was back in the hallway. Only, it wasn't the same. The walls were pulsing, shifting like muscle beneath skin. The floor was wet, coated in something dark and slick. And Riley, he was waiting, standing just a few feet away. His body was still, but his head twitched. His lips curled into something that wasn't a smile. A low, inhuman whisper filled the air. "You can't run from us," he said. His voice was layered, echoing from deep inside his chest. Something was using him, wearing him. I stepped back. My foot sank into the floor, like flesh giving way beneath me. A sickening squelch filled the air. I gagged. Riley took a step forward. His shadow stretched unnaturally long. And then the whispers grew louder. They weren't just coming from him. They were coming from everywhere. The walls, the ceiling, the thing beneath my feet. They were chanting, a language I didn't understand. Riley's head tilted, his grin widening. "You're almost ready," he whispered. My vision swam. My body felt heavy. Something inside me was shifting, twisting. No, I wasn't like him. I wasn't one of them. But the whispers disagreed. They welcomed me, and I realized they had been waiting for me all along. And now, they were inside me. The whispers curled through my mind like smoke, slithering into the cracks, filling the empty spaces. I could feel them wrapping around my thoughts, squeezing, changing me. I pressed my hands to my temples, trying to push them out. But they weren't just voices anymore. They were roots, hooks, teeth. They dug deeper. "Almost ready," Riley had said. "Ready for what?" I staggered back. My breath ragged. My own skin felt wrong, like it wasn't really mine anymore. The walls pulsed, shifting in and out of focus. The hallway wasn't real. None of this was real, but my fear was. And then I felt it, something moving under my skin, slow, writhing. I choked on a gasp, yanking my sleeve up. Dark veins coiled beneath the surface, spreading from my wrist to my forearm, twitching as if something was crawling underneath. I couldn't breathe. I dug my nails into my arm, clawing at the skin, desperate to tear it away, to get it out. Let it in. The voice wasn't in my head this time. It was behind me, right behind me. I turned, too fast. Riley stood inches away, his head tilted at an unnatural angle. His pupils had swallowed his irises, leaving nothing but black voids. His grin stretched wider, too wide. "Don't fight it," he whispered. "It's already part of you." I backed away, shaking my head. No, I wouldn't let this happen. I turned and ran. The hallway warped around me, twisting in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Doors melted into the walls. The ceiling stretched higher. The air thickened, pressing in on me. The whispers followed. They weren't just inside my head anymore. They were everywhere. I reached a corner and skidded to a stop. Something was standing at the end of the hall. Tall, wrong. Its body was human-shaped, but off. Like it had been put together the wrong way. Its limbs were too long. Its fingers curled inward like broken branches. And its face. God. Its face. It didn't have one, just a smooth, blank surface. And yet, I knew it was looking at me. The whispers spiked. A pressure filled my skull, pushing against the inside of my head. The thing took a step forward. I stumbled back, but Riley was behind me. His breath was hot against my neck. "Almost ready," he murmured again. The thing at the end of the hall took another step. The walls shuddered. A door appeared to my left. I didn't think. I just ran through it. The door slammed shut behind me, cutting off the whispers. For a moment, everything was silent. The air was stale, cold. I turned, my chest rising and falling too fast, and realized where I was. Not a hallway, not a room, a mirror maze. Hundreds of reflections surrounded me, stretching into infinity. But something was wrong. I stepped forward. My reflection did the same. But then, it didn't. My body stopped moving, but it kept going. My stomach dropped. The me in the mirror tilted its head. Then it smiled. Not a normal smile. A grin that split my face open from ear to ear. Blood pooled at the edges of its lips, teeth too sharp. My hands trembled. I stepped back, but the mirror me didn't. It pressed a hand against the glass. The surface rippled, and then it stepped through. I barely had time to react. It grabbed me, fingers digging into my skin, cold and wet, like something dead. I screamed, trying to pull away, but it held on. "Let it in," it whispered. Its voice was mine. Its breath smelled like rot. It leaned closer, its lips brushing my ear. "You were never supposed to leave." Then it shoved me. I fell backward, through the mirror, and everything collapsed. Darkness swallowed me whole. I didn't hit the ground, I just kept falling. And then I woke up. The silence was deafening. I was on the floor, the pharmacy floor. The shelves were intact. The lights buzzed faintly. The security cameras blinked like normal, like nothing had happened. I sat up, my body shaking. It was over. It had to be over. I pulled my sleeve back. My veins were normal. My skin was smooth. Riley. I turned, my stomach knotting. He was lying on the ground a few feet away, unmoving. I crawled to him, heart hammering. "Riley." His eyes snapped open. I recoiled. But they were normal. Not black, not wrong. Just his. He blinked, dazed, before pushing himself up with a groan. "What the hell happened?" he mumbled. I opened my mouth, then shut it. Did he remember? Did I? The memories were already slipping away, like a dream fading on waking. I swallowed. "Nothing," I whispered. Riley rubbed his temples. "I feel like I got hit by a truck." He frowned at me. "You okay?" I nodded. But something inside me shifted, a feeling I couldn't name. Something was off. The air felt heavier. The store seemed too still. And then, from the far end of the aisle, something moved. Just a shadow. But it was watching us. I wasn't sure how I knew, but I knew. And then it smiled. I knew I shouldn't have seen it. The security lights barely reached that far, and the darkness between the shelves should have swallowed anything lurking there. But I saw it anyway. A mouth curling into something unnatural. Too many teeth. Riley didn't react. I turned to him, my pulse pounding. His face was pale, eyes still heavy with exhaustion or something worse. "Did you see that?" I whispered. He frowned, rubbing his temples. "See what?" I looked back, but the shadow was gone. The space at the end of the aisle was empty. The shelves stood still. The air hung thick and wrong, like a held breath. I swallowed hard. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I was still. No, I knew what I saw. Something had been there, and it had smiled. I forced myself to my feet, knees shaking. Riley followed, slower, groggy. Everything felt off. Like the store wasn't quite the same as before. The lights were buzzing differently. The aisles seemed longer. The security cameras weren't blinking anymore. Something shifted in the air behind me. A presence. I turned too fast. Nothing. But I could feel it. Watching. Waiting. I grabbed Riley's arm, my voice low. "We need to get out of here." He blinked at me. "What? No, we have to." A loud click. The store's front doors locked themselves. I didn't even have to check. I knew we weren't leaving. Riley did check, though. He stumbled toward the entrance, yanking at the handles. His breath hitched. "No, no, no." He pulled harder. "This isn't happening." I turned in a slow circle, my heartbeat thudding. Something had changed. The air felt thicker. The store smelled different, like something rotting. And then, the security monitors flickered on. Every screen, even the ones that had been dead for months. A low hum filled the room as static danced across them, warping, shifting, until something took shape. The aisles, the shelves, the store. But not us. The screens showed the pharmacy exactly as it was right now, but Riley and I weren't in the footage. Like we weren't here at all. A cold terror crawled up my spine. That wasn't possible. I lifted a hand, waved it in front of one of the cameras. Nothing. The screen didn't show me. Riley backed away, his breath ragged. What the hell is happening? The lights buzzed louder. And then, they cut out, pitch black. A darkness so thick it drowned me. Riley cursed somewhere near me, but his voice sounded warped, like he was further away than he should be. I reached out, fingers brushing nothing but air. The ground beneath me felt soft, wrong. The store was gone. I wasn't standing on tile anymore. It was wet, cold. I turned, but there was nothing. Just empty blackness stretching in every direction. And then, footsteps, slow, heavy, behind me. Something was there. The air turned frigid. A low breath crept down my neck. And then a voice. "You don't belong here." I spun around, but I wasn't fast enough. A hand clamped over my mouth, cold, brittle, like bones wrapped in dead flesh. I thrashed, but the grip tightened. Something whispered in my ear. Not words, not sound. A feeling. A pressure against my mind like it was rewriting me, tearing me apart and putting me back together differently. I was forgetting something. No, I was losing something. Pieces of myself falling away. My name, my past, my voice. The darkness ripped away. I hit the floor hard, gasping. The store was back. The shelves, the aisles, the buzzing lights, like nothing had happened. But something was different. The security monitors still flickered with static, but now there was something on the screens. Not the store, the front entrance. Something stood there, tall, wrong, waiting. I couldn't see its face, but I knew it was smiling. Riley pushed himself up beside me, shaking. His hands gripped his head like he was trying to hold himself together. "We have to go," I whispered. The doors were still locked, but there had to be another way out. I grabbed Riley's wrist and pulled him toward the back of the store. The emergency exit. It was supposed to sound an alarm. I didn't care. I just needed to get out. We ran, the shelves blurring past us, the air pressed against me, thick and suffocating. We reached the door. I shoved against it. It didn't move. I pushed harder, still nothing. And then, from behind us, a voice. "You can't leave." I turned. Riley wasn't beside me anymore. He was standing halfway down the aisle staring at me, but it wasn't him. His face, it was wrong, off. His head tilted too far. His pupils were gone. His mouth curled into a grin. My stomach lurched. "Riley?" He took a step forward, then another. The lights above us flickered, and in the brief flashes of darkness, I saw it. Not just one Riley, dozens, lining the aisles, each one standing perfectly still, each one wearing the same awful smile. The emergency exit suddenly burst open. Cold night air rushed in. I didn't hesitate. I ran, out into the dark, out into the freezing, empty streets. The cold air burned my lungs, but I didn't stop. My legs felt weak, trembling under my weight, but I forced them forward, away from the pharmacy, away from the smiling things watching from inside. The street was empty, too empty. No cars, no people, no distant hum of the city. Just silence. I looked back once. The store windows were dark now. No flickering lights, no movement inside. But I knew. They were still there, watching, waiting. I turned back, pushing forward, my breath ragged. I needed to get home, lock my doors, figure out what the hell was happening. But the streets weren't right. They were wrong. I knew this neighborhood. I had walked these streets 100 times, but now everything looked off. The streetlights weren't where they should be. Buildings stood too tall, too narrow. The road seemed longer, stretching into the distance like it would never end. I walked faster, my footsteps too loud against the empty pavement. Something shifted behind me. I froze, didn't turn, didn't breathe. A sound, soft, wet, like something crawling, getting closer. I took a slow, shaking step forward. Another, then a whisper right at my ear. You shouldn't have left. I spun around. Nothing. Just empty street. The pharmacy was gone. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Keep moving. Don't stop. I walked faster, every nerve screaming at me to run. And then I saw it, my apartment building. The sight of it nearly made me collapse. I pushed forward, desperate. I fumbled for my keys as I reached the entrance, my fingers clumsy, shaking. I jammed the key into the lock, twisted, shoved the door open. The hallway was dark, too dark. The overhead lights weren't on, just a long stretching corridor leading to the stairwell. I hesitated. Something felt wrong, but I was inside. Safe. I shut the door behind me, locking it. My breathing was loud, uneven, my pulse pounding. I took a step forward, and the floor shifted, like the building had breathed. The air felt thick, heavy, wrong. I moved slowly, my footsteps echoing too loud in the quiet. The hallway stretched longer than I remembered. The door to the stairwell looked further away. I kept walking. Every shadow felt like it was watching me. The hallway lights flickered, and for half a second, I saw something standing at the end of the corridor. A tall, thin silhouette, motionless, watching. The light flickered again. It was closer. My stomach dropped. The lights flickered. It moved again. My breath caught in my throat. I took a step back. The lights cut out. Total blackness. I didn't breathe. Didn't move. Something shifted in the darkness. Right in front of me. The lights flickered back on. The hallway was empty. But the door to the stairwell was open now. I didn't think. I ran. I sprinted up the stairs, taking them two at a time, heart pounding. I reached my floor, practically throwing myself into the hallway. My apartment door was just ahead. The hallway was too quiet. I reached my door, jammed my key into the lock, shoved it open. I turned. The hallway wasn't empty anymore. At the far end, they stood there, smiling. I slammed the door shut, locked it. I stumbled backward, my breath ragged. Silence. I pressed my ear to the door. Nothing. For a long moment, I just stood there, trying to slow my breathing, trying to think. I needed to call someone, the police, anyone. I reached for my phone. And then, a tap at my window, soft, slow. I turned, dread twisting in my gut. I lived on the 5th floor. Nothing should be at my window. But there was, a shape, pressing against the glass, fingers too long, a face I didn't recognize. And then, it smiled. My phone buzzed. A text, unknown number. Let us in. The thing at the window tilted its head. I backed away, my breath sharp. I grabbed a chair, shoved it under the doorknob, stepped further away from the window. My phone buzzed again. You can't keep us out forever. The window creaked. The glass bulged inward, like something was pressing from the other side. A crack splintered across it. My heart slammed against my ribs. I turned, ran for my bedroom, locked the door, pressed myself into the corner, phone clutched in my hands, my breathing shallow, desperate. My phone buzzed one more time. Unknown number. We're already inside. I squeezed my eyes shut, tried to breathe, tried to think. The apartment was silent. Nothing moved. Nothing made a sound. And then the closet door creaked open. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The space inside was pitch black, deeper than it should have been, too deep. The shadows didn't just sit there. They shifted. Something was inside, something that had been waiting. A faint, sickly breath slipped out from the darkness, slow, damp. And then, it stepped forward. I didn't see its face at first, just the way it moved. Limbs too long, fingers dragging along the doorframe, shoulders hunched, unnatural. And then, the light from my phone screen caught its face. It was me. But not. Its eyes were too wide, too empty. Its mouth stretched into a grin, an imitation of a smile. And then it whispered, in my own voice, "You're in my place now." My stomach turned to ice. It lunged. I threw myself off the bed, barely dodging as it slammed against the spot where I'd been. My hands scrambled for anything, a lamp, a book, anything to fight back. But I wasn't fast enough. The thing grabbed me. Its fingers dug into my arms, sharp, cold. I screamed. I kicked, struggled, but it was stronger. It pulled me closer, its breath cold against my face. I could smell it, rotting, damp, wrong. "You don't belong here," it whispered, and then it dragged me toward the closet. I fought. I kicked, clawed. The darkness inside the closet stretched wider. I saw things moving inside. Hands, faces, smiling, waiting. The rules. The rules. I'd broken every single one. The thought hit me like a hammer, and now I was being taken. I thrashed harder, my fingers digging into the floorboards. My body jerked as the thing dragged me inch by inch. I couldn't let it take me. My hand brushed against something. My phone. I grabbed it, fingers shaking, and did the only thing I could think of. I turned on the flashlight. Blinding white light flooded the room. The thing screamed. Not a normal scream, something worse. A sound that split my skull. It let go of me, staggered backward, hands clawing at its face. The closet behind it shrank. The darkness pulled inward. The faces inside twisted in agony. The thing that wore my face looked at me one last time, and then it was gone. The closet was just a closet. The air was still, silent. I didn't move for a long time, didn't speak, didn't breathe. Then, my phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. Don't forget the rules next time. I felt sick. There wouldn't be a next time. I wasn't going back. I couldn't. I forced myself to stand. My whole body shook. I didn't bother packing. I just grabbed my keys, threw open the door, and ran. Down the stairs, through the hallway, out of the building. The city felt normal again. Cars, people, streetlights, like nothing had ever happened. I didn't care. I just kept walking, far, far away from that place. And as I walked, I told myself I would never break the rules again. Because now I understood. They weren't there to protect the pharmacy. They were there to protect me. And I had been so close to never escaping at all.